Hello again and welcome to another episode of In Power Health, the only program on television that gives you so much information, so much knowledge that gives you, of course, the power to make the right choices to promote and, that overall health. That's what we want. And of course, that's what we do here on In Power Health. My name is Alex Assing. Now, for the last few episodes, we were talking about detoxing, how important it is to detox the body. Many people have this misconception that you can just take one pill, one treatment, and that detoxes your entire body, that cleanses everything. But, that could not be further away from the truth. You have to know about the organs, how they work, how they function, certain symptoms you may experience, and then you can learn about how to go about detoxing each organ, of course, in the body. Now, we were talking about the liver. We mentioned the various functions of the liver, how to go about detoxing the liver. We did the gallbladder as well, I believe. And alongside me, of course, Dr. Myers. Today, Doc, we're moving on to another organ, very important organ, kidneys.
We're going to do the kidneys.
Yeah. I know many people suffer from kidney failure, especially in this country. Lots of people on dialysis, living with one kidney maybe after a transplant. This is good information. We need to know how to prevent, kidney diseases and, of course, by extension, kidney failure.
But before we do that, I wanted to mention something. I'm reading an article. It's quite long. It's 27 pages.
Yeah.
It's on the role of gut microbiota in defining human health. In other words, how gut bacteria defines our health.
Yes.
All right. And it says recent studies have demonstrated that bacterial community composition is dramatically altered in diseases such as obesity, periodontal diseases, and healthy subjects typically exhibit distinct, diverse, temporarily stable bacterial consortia at the site when compared with patients displaying disease symptoms. So what it's saying is that every time you look at diseases, and down in I think it's the 4th or 5th page, they're talking about babies who, as soon as they're born, get eczemas, and what gut bacteria is short in it, right, compared to things, and that if you're going to treat that baby, the first thing you have to do is to get, and the thing about babies who are eczematous, who show large amounts of eczema, a lot of times they're cesarean, right? Yeah. So they don't get a chance to get the mother bacteria. Or if the mother has had a lot of antibiotics, that her gut is impeached.
Right. You mean like maybe during the pregnancy?
Yeah, during pregnancy or before, they might have some kind of inflammatory problems, and they got, large doses of antibiotics, and it shifts them to a permanent kind of yeast fungal infection story. Right. So it's fascinating to watch, because this is a whole new thing. Years ago, I started ordering stuff from a Garden of Life. They make probiotics in the States. And they make probiotics that started off based on the work of,
Linus?
No, not Linus Pauline's. Guy who went and studied the tribes in North Tibet.
I was prompted by the cameraman. Okay, I'm going to give him that credit today.
And he studied them. They lived to all kinds of ages of 140, 150, 160 years. They still do. National Geographic pictured them in a program a few years ago.
Right.
And he said that the only thing that he found different is the amount of fermented foods that they ate. And he brought back the kefir and all that. But they have a formula that has about 18 gut bacteria that they call primal defense. Yeah. And they use it for a whole heap of skin diseases. And we're talking about 20 years ago, and I says, I can't understand why gut bacteria would have to do with skin diseases. But now with all the research coming out, it begins to become plain. So you realize that the guys who making that, they have their own thing. They recently brought out one, which was one for the prostate.
Nice.
Right? So you have a gut bacteria that so you begin to understand that antibiotics was a boon to the human society, but is also a terrible bane because it destroys the gut bacteria, because it is antibiotic, is against life, and it allows the opportunistic bad bacteria to take over. So when you come upon this and you see that, for instance, people who eat high fat, high carbohydrate diets have a totally different makeup of bacteria in the gut, and that is very dependent upon what they eat and the mindset that they have. So it would seem as if the bacteria, whether they have Firmicutes bacteria or bacteroids, Firmicutes being the one on the obesity, that they come to the conclusion that it doesn't only affect the gut in the processing of all this fat and things like that, but that it also affects the brain. It creates a certain kind of craving.
Yes. Okay.
You follow me? Because if you have a yeast infection in the gut, that yeast infection literally plugs into the nervous system, picks up the phone and says, send sugar.
Exactly.
Literally. So
big piece of
so you have people who are obese and have this need to eat large amounts of food. I just call it snake food. Right? So you begin to understand that the thing that stops that, the only thing that will stop that to a large extent is if you start giving that person massive amounts of gut bacteria that have a different makeup. So what it will do is it will quell the Firmicutes bacteria, push them out, and replace it with something a little bit more sedate, right, for want of a better word, and then the person will lose the urge to eat. So you begin to understand, the more you dig up in medicine, you begin to realize that it is absolutely crazy.
It all starts in the gut. That's what I'm beginning to realize.
I had a lady come to me with a baby, very bad eczemas. And the first thing I told her, I said, you have got, she's still breastfeeding, thank God. I said, you have got to get on gut bacteria regularly, every day, taking large amounts. And she looked at me, she says, why? I said, so it could get into your milk. And it could get into the baby. You'll also give the baby a little bit of the baby ones, but you have to do that. It's interesting to watch what's happening to the baby, because she said to me, I tried everybody, and I went all to the States and things like that, and nobody could do anything. And nobody suggested anything about gut bacteria. So you begin to understand that medicine that we're doing now is 50 years behind the research. It's crazy. 50 years. So you have all these things being done, about the Clostridium difficile, about the Cytobacter redentium, and the effect that they have. So they're looking at now at all the chronic diseases and beginning to realize that it starts in the gut. Now, one of the things I have noticed, say with psoriasis, is that if you have a person with psoriasis and you begin to feed them large amounts of omega-3, 6, 9, and strange enough, bile salts, the psoriasis begins to decrease. And a lot of other diseases like that. So whenever you have people and you're going to treat them for multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, all these things, you got to change the gut bacteria. And that means you have to give them extra doses. So if they say 2 pills twice a day, you have to go 2 pills 4 times a day, so you start pushing out. And then if you could use that in, say, coconut water to make more. So sometimes, I use things from Garden of Life, and I found that I could take a liter of coconut water, open it, pop open the pills, throw it inside there. Don't cork it back because it will explode. Leave it overnight. When you get up next morning, the thing is sour, and you just drink that for the next few days. So what you've done is you've massively increased the gut bacteria, and you're doing exactly what in Mechinkov found the guys in North Turkey doing. North Turkey and southern states in the Ural Mountains and things there. So you say, if that is the case, then we've been amiss with a lot of things. And you begin to understand, I worked in a pharmaceutical company. And, you sit down with the guys in research. And you begin to realize that the guys in research have the same philosophy as you have outside. So the thing is, we have a disease. Now we look at all the things that we have, that if you give it, it will alleviate the problem. That's what they do, And then they do all the tests, and they get samples from everybody, and they put it together, and then they have tests to do, and then they look at what might be the side effects, and they test it out on a sample of 50 people. And then when they test it out, if it don't quite work, they look at it and they say, well, let's take all the people under 30 and do a spread on that. But let's take all the people over 30 and do a spread on that. And they might go and do a second test, and then they put that out. They put that out based on that set of tests. And it goes to the FDA, and the FDA looks and says, oh, this is nice, boom, put it out. So the medicine that they're producing has absolutely nothing to do with the spiritual, philosophical and mental aspects of what is happening. And more as they dig up in the probiotics, and I think one of these days what I'll do is I'll sit down and go through all the things with all the various bacteria. Look, you're talking about breastfeeding and colitis and obesity, how you set up the baby, and it's just absolutely amazing. Here they talk about cesarean births and vaginal births, and they say that now they have some doctors that will take a sponge and put it into the woman's vagina, soak up the bacteria. And when the baby comes out and it starts to cry, and squeeze it into the mouth, so let it get down in, so it gets a starter. And it turns out that the whole structure of what the mother is doing is designed to set up the microbiome system with prebiotics in the milk, and with things to decrease the mucosal lining and all kinds of things. And you mean, God is an absolutely fantastic being. We can't even begin to believe. And we talk about the kidneys, you see, in a way, in a little minute, that is totally different from the approach that is normally put out. So that you can begin to see things that you don't normally see. People think, oh, my kidney bad. This is what's happening. How do I know my kidney's bad? What happens?
Yes.
There are ways, there are certain emotions and certain attributes that are connected, mental attributes that are connected to the kidneys. And long before the kidneys reach a point where it starts to fail, it is already failing mentally and spiritually.
Okay, all right.
That if you know what to do, you can pick it up.
Yes.
For instance,
I like that. Yeah.
you have a guy and he comes in and he says, oh boy, I'm tired, You say, what do you do? As a executive. I say, how much days a week it is work? 10, 12, 15? What I'm saying is that 7-day week that you have, you're probably working 15, 16 hours a day. They say, what do you mean? Say, it's carry home work? Oh yes, so I have to carry home work every day. So what time is finished? Well, it's finished 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Wow. Right? And he can't understand why he's tired, or she can't understand why she's tired. And we're all a little bit guilty of that. We want to succeed. So therefore, you have to look at it and say, what drives a person like that? Because that person would sit down there and tell you that, and you say, do me a favor, sit down there, stand up suddenly for me. And the person stand up suddenly and you see they rock a little bit. You see what happened? You see what I notice when I get up fast, I just feel a little dizzy. I figure my blood must be ain't right or something like that. No, it's your adrenals that ain't kicking properly.
That's right.
Right? So the adrenals is part of the kidney system. That is what gives you the power from the kidneys, to give you the willpower to do things. Right? So when you begin to look at that, you begin to understand that what he's doing is that 12-day week that he working there is depleting his energies, is depleting his electrical energy.
Right, I got that.
And there are obvious things sometimes that we look at and we don't see. I give you a little story. For years now, ever since I did acupuncture, I've been wondering why the urinary bladder, which is just literally a sac that holds water to pee, to take from the kidneys. I suppose you don't go dribbling all over the place. that is what it seems to suggest. But when you look at it from an electronic point of view, the urinary bladder meridian line is by far the biggest in the body.
Okay.
You know, it starts here and it goes all down the back in a double line going down the back, all down the leg, down to the little toe. I said, well, why would the urinary bladder line be so big? And the heart meridian starts here and it finishes there. You know, they have internal pathways, but the external pathways there. See, it doesn't make sense. Then I'm pounding my head and I'm reading all the books and I'm reading all the advanced books, and suddenly I get a little hint. And I'm sitting down, in fact, when I was doing this, and the fellow says that the kidney deals with willpower. So we will talk about that. And then he says the bladder also deals with willpower, but it deals with a more superficial level. Right? And we'll go into a little detail on that before, so that we understand when we detox in the kidneys, what we're doing. And then it suddenly hit me that the kidneys separates what? It puts out water, but it puts out water in order to carry out certain things. What does it carry out? Minerals. Okay. Right? It will take a little bit of potassium, it will take a little bit of calcium, it will take a little bit of this, take a little bit of that, and it will carry it down into the bladder. And I said, the only way it can do that is electromagnetically. It has to have certain potential energies, certain voltages that will change the relationship. So what happens inside the kidneys is like sometimes it acts as an anode and sometimes it acts as a cathode. Okay. Sometimes it is putting stuff in and sometimes it is pulling stuff out. Now, if it does that and it pulls stuff out, it means that surplus energy runs out from the kidneys into the bladder.
Yeah. Okay. All
okay?
Right.
Now, when you look at the bladder meridian on the back, coming down, every single organ has a point, what is called a back shoe point. And they're very, very important for changing the energetics of the organ. Right?
Interesting.
And then you have that going down, and then you have another line on the outside here. Right. And the other line on the outside, right, as we'll show, has all the spirit points. See? Spirit points too. You go down the back, it controls the back, it controls the way how you walk, all sorts of things. See? And then it dawned upon me that what the bladder does is the bladder collects the surplus electrical energy that has done its job and puts it back into the body. Okay. But it doesn't put it back into the body by just pushing it back into the Tantian. Right. It has a distribution line that distributes it right up to the eyes. Nice. In fact, the life force of your body is demonstrated in your eyes, and it doesn't come from the liver. The liver controls the eyes. Exactly. It comes from the kidney, bladder, the UB meridian. So I said, that is what that line is for. That line is to redistribute the electromagnetic potential, you know, the back into the organs. And the thing about it is that when you breathe air in, you breathe air in where you take in oxygen. That's what they teach you in school. But they never teach you about charged particles. No. So you could never understand why, when you're living by the sea, you're more healthy than when you're living in land. Because when the waves do so and it kick up, and the sun shines on it, it breaks off charged particles, negative ions. It blows in the wind. Yeah. So you're breathing a high amount of negative ions. Those negative ions get breathed into the lungs, but the lungs doesn't keep it. It goes into the water, because the only thing that will store charge is a water-based thing. Water is the activator of life on this planet. Right? So it goes into that, and then by virtue of the pump on the diaphragm, it goes down the channel, down into the lower Tantian, which is very interesting because that lower Tantian also surrounds the small intestine and has connections to the large intestine and a whole set of the other organs. When you look at that, you say, okay, that charge is here. So in Eastern medicine and philosophy, they say that is the seat of your power. And that is not just a airy-fairy statement. It is an actual fact. Your electromagnetic charge is there. That is why when you have a woman who is going into menopause and the hormones and the minerals that hold that in place starts to go out of whack, everybody say, hey, we're beginning to get old, we have to change the relationship. Right? And that goes, and the body can't hold it. It's like your battery, you have a cell going, same thing.
Yeah.
That she's sitting down somewhere, and all of a sudden she feels this hot flash, as you call it, which is surplus energy that just runs up into the system. Now, it can...
That explains it.
Right? No, this is. So they'll tell you that I feel this thing run up. Not only that, if it runs up and it runs up weak, and it's in the middle of the night, she wakes up bathed in cold sweat. Right? So you have to go back and charge up that system in order to stop that.
Right.
Western medicine have no answer for that. And I'm not denigrating Western medicine. I know. Just saying, because they don't deal in energy. Right. You ask a Western doctor about energy, he don't have a clue. And the whole body works on energy. Every single enzymatic action, every single transfer, every single thing with the oxygen going into the blood happens because of electricity, electrical energy. And we don't know anything about it.
Maybe some may have an idea, but to get into depth and really go through the energetics.
So the explanation of what happens now is very, very interesting. That in Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, even in African medicine and Indian medicine, they are talking about Red Indian medicine. They had answers for that hundreds, thousands of years ago.
I believe that.
So that you begin to understand. I was talking the other day and I said that I was dealing with this book and I was reading it to the class. And they talked about the effect of the cycles of the sun on the human body that runs in a 22-minute cycle on the earth. And everybody started laughing in class and said, what nonsense. And I said, well, I do physics. So listen what it is they're saying. Exactly. And I talked about the plasma resonance of the ionosphere on the earth, and the frequency that it makes and what it does to the potential that is across the body. And everybody sat in class with their mouth open. I said, what that makes all of you? A bunch of ignoramuses. You just don't know what is going on.
Educate them.
So I began to realize that what happened is that the urinary bladder collects that energy. Now, the human body is a garner. It garners energy from everywhere. So on the body spine, you have a set of vortices that suck energy in. In the Ayurvedic system, they call them the chakras. And everybody think that they're talking, but they've mapped them out. There's instrumentation that you can use, Western instruments, to map them out. They know they're there. What happens is the main one, the Ming Men fire that takes up the fire, right, is right at the back of the spine. Right in your lower back. Where there's that back pain, right? When you have plenty of sex and your back starts to hurt you because you deplete you deplete the fire. Now you know, right? Again, was thinking that you didn't eat properly. So when it depletes that energy, so that energy comes in. Now, it takes a little while to realize. I'm glad that I studied physics because you could make sense of it. It took me a little while to realize that the Ming Men energy that comes in, and then I found a book that verified it because it talked about the frequencies that get absorbed. The frequencies that get absorbed there are way in the high level, gigahertz and things like that, where the frequencies that are absorbed on the body are more the light energies. So if you want to put it in a nice philosophical way.
Yeah.
The chakras are energy centers that absorb energy from the cosmos, right? The breathing and things like that, and the food absorb energy from the solar system, from the sun.
Yes. Okay.
You understand? And that you have levels of energy. So you have energy that is absorbed from the planetary system, which will affect menstruation and all these kind of things. You know, the moon and the Jupiter and Mercury. If you follow astrology and you watch whenever Mercury is in retrograde, and watch the mental attitudes of people around you.
Okay.
And then watch Mercury come out of retrograde and watch the change. Watch the change in the politics of the world for that matter.
Okay.
You know, and there's people saying, oh, that is utter nonsense. Right? So in Chinese medicine, the kidneys is the water element. Right? So the water element has two things. It has the tendency to freeze, and it has the tendency to run loose according to the temperature. It also has the, I have a book there called The Fourth Stage of Water, where when you put water in a cup, there's a layer close to the side of the cup that has a different potential from the center of the cup.
Okay. All right.
There's all kinds of things going on. There's a skin on the top of the water. But if you have a little tube in it, very small, you'll see it climb up the top.
Yeah.
And then fellas have invented stuff where they put little things with nanotubes, and you put them in the water, and the water runs straight continuously, because that electrical potential at that level works. Is so like a free energy machine, you know. So anyhow, so the kidneys deals with willpower. But when you say willpower means the ability to set yourself to do something. Okay, but that sounds right. Most people will leave it there. But you have to ask yourself, well, how am I going to use this willpower? We don't think down into the depths. Why it is that you have a very bright kid who bums up his life, and you have a kid who is very slow, ends up being at the top of the rung. It's the old story, the rabbit, the hare, and the tortoise running a race.
Yeah,
you understand?
Yeah.
So you have in the water element that you have to have focus, and you have to have concentration. In other words, you must be able to focus on what you're doing, and you must be able to concentrate it and hold it. So if you could focus your willpower and concentrate it on what you want, you have the ability to make magic. You know what I mean by making magic? Getting things around you to change in the way that you want it to change, within the context of how life is, you know. I mean, you ain't gonna, if you live in North, you ain't gonna plant corn in the middle of the winter. That is a waste of time. You dig me? So you say that the willpower, which is the Z, that's the Z of the kidneys, must focus the Shen, the Shen of the heart. And what's the Shen? The Shen is the passion. So your willpower, for you to accomplish something, it must have passion, and the passion must be focused, and it must be concentrated. How many partners you know get them and say, boy, I know a business and I had a brilliant idea for a business, and I go in and work on it. And you say, good, what are you going to do? So I'm going down the road and I'm going to talk to my partner. And you see him 2 days later and you say, what about the idea for the business? How it going? What business? All right? Yeah?
Yeah.
And you see, when you're talking about, that, I think about it, you know, and you know that it ain't going nowhere.
No, it's not.
So good ideas always fall down because of that. So the focusing of the will with concentration and passion produces a staying power. Now, the spiritual build-up in the kidneys from willpower Bet you can't tell me what that is.
Spiritual.
Oh, yeah, if you use your willpower for a long time, focused and with passion, what does it build in you?
Oh, confidence.
Yeah, you could call that, but it builds something else.
Yeah.
What does it build? It builds.
That willpower.
It builds wisdom.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was yeah.
So wisdom becomes the virtue of the kidneys. So if you have somebody and they move through their life and they're always focused and they're always doing things and they're always expanding out,
Yeah.
when that person gets into the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they become the wise old person.
Right.
Right? In the case of the woman, that is the one that all the young people will go to for advice. You know, oh God, mother, I have a man and he putting a horn on me. Sit down, child. Let's talk about it. Yeah, let me tell you a few stories,
And
right?
some wisdom.
Yes, and release some wisdom. Because she has passed through that fire and handled it successfully.
Right, right.
Not reacted to it in a certain way, but so that is what makes her a queen. You know, you could sense the power coming off that person.
Yeah.
Similarly, a businessman.
Right.
That is why I could never understand why in a society you have people, let's say for instance you have permanent secretaries, or you have old doctors who've gone through the mill, or you have nurses who have 30, 40 years of experience. And when they reach 65 or 60, you tell them, go home, retire. So what you're doing is you're taking your wealth of practical experience and you're putting it in the dustbin, because they go home with no direction, with no sense of purpose, and a few layers later they
I don't want to say it.
say it,
Dead?
die. Yes, they drop dead. They drop dead because they've lost their focus. That is the time when those people in the society should be concentrating. Listen, the Iroquois nation in North America, the rules that they had, it still exists. You know what they call it? The United States Declaration of Independence and the rules by which they live was taken lock, stock, and barrel from the Iroquois nation. The only difference is that the Senate in the Iroquois nation was only made up of grandmothers. But in America, you never find that. Not in that male macho, you know, gun-toting Steve McQueen and Clint Eastwood. You know, you would never find that. Why? If you think about it, if a country has to go to war, and there's a bunch of young fellas sitting down in the Senate, or a bunch of middle-aged fellas who trying to prove their manhood, right? They're going to end up sending a whole heap of young people to get killed. Whereas if it's a whole set of grandmothers who has had to bear children, who has had to make the children grow, who has had to watch their children start to make children, the consensus of opinion that they will have will be much wiser from a living situation rather than a temperamental situation.
Yeah.
You understand?
I follow.
Now you notice all the explanation we're doing relative to what the kidneys do. Right? So, what drives the kidneys? You see, we have willpower. But what is the, if you want to call it, the negative aspect of the kidneys? Although in the right context it's not negative. Right? What will cause you to pee your pants involuntarily?
Right.
Tell me.
Well, fear. Yes,
Fear.
it goes on, yeah.
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear.
Fear weakens the bowels
So
as well.
so you also notice something. So in Chinese medicine they say that the kidneys controls the two lower orifices.
Yeah.
What happens there happens because of the kidney system. So when a person walks into you as a Eastern doctor and says, I am constipated, it has a different connotation if you walk in a Western doctor and say, I am constipated. Take this Dupolax. Boom!
Just like that. No, for
Right?
real, for real.
So you might be a Eastern doctor, but well, I always constipated. And you say, well, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
What is you squeezing your boomsy
It'll
about?
be strange hearing a doctor, reacting that way or responding that way. You know.
You-
But that's a difference right there.
But you understand, we into the theory of the thing.
Yeah.
So you say this whole idea of a toxic system is not just a case of, well, it has something inside there toxifying it and we have to detox it. You do have that stage. But you could take out that physical detox and still be left with all the emotional,
Correct.
mental,
Correct.
and
Still
spiritual toxicity
Still there.
that run in there. So what we're talking about is this thing. So you say, what gives us the ability to concentrate? What gives us the ability to concentrate? You could tell me?
Kidneys.
No, don't hand me back. Don't hand me
We're talking about the kidneys.
I want you to think how
Okay.
how if you're developing the art of concentration,
All right.
how would it get better and better and better?
Right.
Think about it. Let me put it to you this way. Let us say that you're doing a job, right? You get a job to do a big advertisement campaign, advertising campaign.
Right.
And you sit down and the money looking good, so you're burning the midnight oil. And you're putting ideas together. How will you know if your ideas going to be successful or not? When I tell you, you're going to say, yes.
Okay.
But if you figure it out, you're promoting you to genius.
Right. Okay. Well, I know it definitely has to do with the energetics in the body.
Listen. If you have a bike and you're riding the bike, you're going to learn to ride the bike.
Right.
And you push off and you fall. When you pick up the bike, what do you have to do? What do you have to do before you climb back on the
Right,
bike?
Check it, make sure everything's in order.
You check it. What else you check?
You check yourself.
You check yourself.
Right,
You
physically.
check yourself
Okay.
physically. What else you check?
Right. You see if anybody's watching.
Especially if it's a little young lady up the road that you have a little crush on, you know what I mean? No, but seriously.
Okay.
You have to stop and say, well, how did I fall?
Okay. All right.
Right? What did I do wrong?
Right.
In other words, you have to reflect.
Okay.
If you're running a system where you're trying to be successful and you do not reflect every single moment as to whether you're going forward or whether you're going backward, you will never succeed.
Right.
And in order to reflect and to shift whatsoever is not quite right, okay, then you say, this is good, because the more you reflect is the more concentration you get, because you get into the detail of what you have to do. I was looking at a show the other day, just by chance. I'm sitting on eating something on the television, I switched it on, and it was these guys and they were building a tank for somebody, and they said, so they're going to build this tank, and the guy didn't have enough space, a fish tank that you want to put in the restaurant and thing. And the fella says, well, we'll build this one, you do so and so. The fella says, no, you can't do that. I don't have space. I can't have it higher than that. And then they went out and they do so, and they put this tube in the center. And when they finish, the fella says, you can't do that because that's the wrong position. If I do that, I can't do that. I can't put my thing here.
Yeah.
And they kept doing that all through the whole thing. And you recognize that here they have the enthusiasm, and the person who wanted the tank was reflecting.
Yeah.
They weren't reflecting, he was reflecting. But what they didn't have was no planning. They didn't sit down and draw out something and put it. And that's the superficiality of American television.
Okay.
They don't teach you how to think. They just put you into a massive thing, and you then start doing that because that look like they get it done. They get it done after many mistakes, which cost them plenty money.
Okay, exactly. Yeah.
You know, so you say they had the willpower and the drive. They didn't reflect. The owner had to do the reflection on them, otherwise they'd have put everything in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And the one thing that they didn't do is they didn't stop and say, let us plan. Everything was done vice, right? And I sat there watching at that and I say, this is a terrible program to show kids.
Yeah.
You know, terrible.
Yeah.
It giving them the whole wrong idea about how to do things.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but that is what we're talking about.
So in effect, what you're saying, Doc, is that the more you reflect, I guess the more successful you'll be, the more things will be
Yes,
done
yes. So
successfully.
the habitual reaction to the fear that you have, and this fear that we have It's two kind of fears. It's the immediate fear, right? And then you have another fear, which is the fear that comes up from inside, based on your ancestral line. Let me give you an idea. If you're doing martial arts and somebody pull a naked blade on, all the time you're practicing with a wood knife, great man, you have no problem. And you pow! Razor sharp blade coming at you. What do you think happens?
Yeah. Things change and you start to think now.
No, you don't think at all. You freeze instantly right there.
Yeah.
Come on, breathe.
Yeah.
Can't take it, and then the fear takes you over and your belly starts to tremble.
All right.
And the person who is using the knife had to pull back and say, okay. And this time you say no and you're sweating. And you say, I didn't know that this was going to happen, you know.
And that's practice, huh?
So where did that fear come from?
Yeah.
Where did that fear come from? That fear didn't only come by watching the blade. That fear is built in to the human race over thousands and thousands of eons of killing each other. And killing each other with knives and swords. Right? In countries where they have swords, like in Japan, it is much harder to get a license to have a sword than a license to have a gun.
All right. All right.
Do you know why?
Yeah, well, for that same reason, I guess. Yeah.
If you have a man and he's in a room with 15, 20 feet square, and he has a sword and you have people inside there armed with guns, there's a chance that he might kill everybody before they before they get a chance to shoot him. But only people who use weapons at that efficiency understands that.
Yeah.
You understand? So once you understand that, and you understand what are the rules that you have to carry out in order to conquer that fear, and the main rule is that you have to learn to breathe properly. So we start in the extreme, right? We start in the extreme, and you realize that you have to breathe properly. So you suddenly realize that there's a connection between fear and breathing.
I've experienced that before.
So you're running afraid all the time, and you're running, scampering about, trying to do things, and after a while, your breathing, which should be down here, starts coming up in your chest. So, you know, people walk into me and I says, what are you afraid of? I say, why? You're breathing. I say, you have sleep apnea. What's that? You jump up in the night. Yeah, boy. And I don't sleep properly, and I had to go to get a pump the hole on my nose. I say, no, what you have to do is to lengthen the breathing. If you lengthen back the breathing, you have no need for that. So a lot of times in medicine that is done, I call it medicine for profit.
Right.
So you have fellas like Butterkeyo who says, you have sleep apnea, do these breathing exercises. You could go on the web, they have a whole set of things on it. But you wouldn't do that. You'll run down the road, you'll go in a sleep place, and they say, I have sleep apnea. Buy this machine, it costs you $6,000, connect it to your face, and then you won't have no sleep apnea. So whole night now, you have this thing pushing air inside. When you wouldn't take your lazy bum and go out and do some exercise to stretch the diaphragm back, because that fear is tied up, that shortness of breath is tied up with fear, constant fear inside you. So the point I'm making is that when you do all these things, after a while you begin to realize what is begin to make you ill, long before you get ill.
Okay.
Right? You're doing a job, you're not planning, you don't have no concentration, you're fluctuating, the job start going bad, you start quarreling with everybody on the job, all you're doing things right, because you're not reflecting. So your concentration wanes. Right? So you burn a lot of adrenal energy. When you burn a lot of adrenal energy, it starts affecting your liver and your sugar and all kinds of things, and you begin to boom, 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 boom. But when you have a person and they sit down, like your partner, who had the idea, he start a business, and he didn't do it, and then another time he had another idea, and you want to start another business. We know people like that, don't we? Right? Shaking your head. Then what happens is, after a while, the person having that energy and not putting that energy forward creatively, they begin to fantasize. In other words, they begin to think of conclusion of the business. And they say, I have a good idea, you know. And then he said, well, you always have ideas, you know. He said, no. When I win the lottery, I'm going to
You're setting up yourself right there.
I have a partner, and he telling me the other day, he said, for years I play in the lottery. I said, whenever I win the lottery, I'm good. So he win the lottery. He didn't tell nobody.
Okay.
Take the money and he put it in the bank. Come on, he tell me, he said, he had the money in the bank, you know. See? He said, but I have a problem. So what is that? He said, I don't know what to do with it. He said, I could buy a car, I could buy a house. He said, but that is not it. What it is I wanted this money for all the time. So in other words, the first part of his fantasy came true and he realized that they have nothing else. He have no way of taking that money and putting it into useful use, which is what he thought he wanted. You know, so he say, whenever you have that and you go into fantasy, it means that if you have a job, you'll stay into the job, and then you become very orthodox.
Yeah.
You go to church on Sunday, right? You dress right for the job. You dress right for church. You say all the right things. What you're saying is that you have descended into a state of constant fear. You have to behave right. You have to do everything right. Otherwise, you will not be accepted.
Right.
All that is really a demonstration of the lack, right, of your ability to concentrate, to reflect, and to stay what you're doing. Because the first part of that, you know, covers that. So you understand the toxicity that we're slowly evolving.
Definitely.
Right? So, when we say orthodoxy, if you have an orthodoxy where you get up in the morning, you get up on Sunday morning, you go to church.
Like a routine.
Yes, you have a routine.
Yeah.
So it is a routine that is, for want of a better word, it suppresses life's open impulses.
Okay.
You know, so you wouldn't get up one morning and say, I have a business idea, you know, and I've got to do it because I had to find this guy because he's going away. And then you say, I had to see him because he's going away, you know, after lunch.
Yes.
So I had to go down the road and see him, bring him and tell him I'm coming so I could get what I want, so I could start what I'm doing. And then you turn around and say, but I can't do that, I had to go to church.
Ah.
Well, I can't do that because I had to go down the road and do so and so and so.
Must keep the routine.
You must keep the routine.
Yeah.
So the routine suppresses all the impulses that will allow you to evolve,
Yeah.
to go to a higher level.
Yeah.
So what it is, orthodoxy is really attempting to preserve the past in the present.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your mother teach you that, your father
I
teach you that,
understand exactly
then
what
you
you're
do that. And what that does, to follow that to the letter, kills your whole creative spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. Yeah.
So it had a man 2,000 years ago, and they write a book on him, and somebody asked him something, and he say, let the dead bury the dead. And that's a very difficult thing to understand. Can you understand that?
Well, if, as it relates to what you just said, yes, I certainly can.
Tell me what you mean.
Well, I was actually going to just give a little example of what I have done recently with the whole routine. I like to keep a routine, you know, but then I realized that sometimes I might want to do something different, and I just keep remembering, I gotta keep this routine, I gotta keep this routine. So what I've started doing is something random. Like I might just say, okay, after work, I'm going to watch a movie, you know, and just change things up.
Break out your rhythm.
Yeah, break the cycle, and
Yes.
it actually works.
Of course it works. It brings back your zap, your gizmo, your bump. Right?
Something like that, yeah.
You know, I always say, you know, you leave school and 10 years pass and you meet your partner from school who you always used to come first and second in tests. And you're coming up the road and you see him and he holding a woman's hand and you have two children and you say, hey, miss, how you going? I say, going good. John, how you going? Well, I all right. You mean, you know Mary here? I say, yeah. um, up the road from where I was living, she was living. I said, yeah, I remember. Yeah. Well, I'm married to she, and I have 2 children, and I have a nice regular job. Now we buy a little house up the road, you know, through the NHA, and we go and things. So I'm getting ready to think, I'm thinking about when I retire. But you know, man, barely in the 30s, telling you that you're thinking about what you're going to do when you retire at 65.
Yeah.
You understand? So he just shut down any potential of creativity that he has. Right?
And I'm sure he was sounding just like that too.
No. You have Louise Hay, one of those medical intuitive people who will look at you and tell you things about yourself, you know, what sickness you might have. And she says, people who are constrained by that fear, so they have that lack of action, always have problems with their low back and their knees.
Okay.
Because the knees is what propels you forward.
All right.
And since you're not propelling yourself forward, the body begins to say, well, we have no need for it.
Right.
I mean, I'm speaking metaphorically.
Right. No, I know
You
what
know?
you mean. I know what you mean. Once again, the connection between your thoughts, your emotions, and of course your body.
So fantasy, daydreaming, which is a compensation to cover your fear. Okay? Compensation to cover your fear is a vain attempt to wish a self-created future in a moment. So you could sit down and think, well, when I become boss of the whole network, right? What I will do and what not to do. And you fix it up and you see yourself doing that. But you're not prepared to say, well, I got to go and do some more studies, I got to get a master's and probably a PhD or something in order to even begin to dream about getting there. You have no plan.
You want to get there, but
right? So that means that you want to dream and you want to have it, but you don't want to do the work. You don't want to do the work. So those are the dreamers. They're trapped in fear. And then you have the others who, they'll go out and they want to tear down the world. So anytime you see them, they're well dressed, they have everything organized, they might be making money, you know what I mean? They might have a successful thing. They're working 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And I see the cameraman making me some kind of signals. I think we might have to leave this and continue it in the next one. You notice all we're doing is we're just talking about the evolution of the willpower inside of the human psyche. A thing that we never think about. We never think about why we're here, how we're going to move from so to so. We just bumble through life because that is not part of education. Nobody bothers to educate us as to how to succeed.
I love it.
You know?
Very important.
I have a Jewish prayer book at home.
Yeah.
It says, "Oh God, grant me wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and cunning."
And cunning?
Yes. Yes. The first time I said that, I say, wow! Right? And then, as fate would have it, I had a partner who died. So I went down San Fernando and I went in the Anglican church. And I'm sitting down there and the priest says, well, he was a good man. You know, you shall take it. And his soul is going to go. So I see a prayer book. So I pick up the prayer book and I open it. And I open it, and on the first line on top of the book it says, "Oh God, make me a good servant." I close it and I put it back.
I can see that.
I don't want to be nobody's servant. God didn't make me to be a servant. But you see, that is the whole evolution. What the mind gets fashioned to think.
Okay.
Right? I read in the Bible, it says God made me in his own image and likeness. And God has created, so I'm going to create too. Literally. Right? So when you put it into the context, you begin to understand what we're saying relative to the kidneys, the philosophical groundings of the kidneys, and then how that begins to get perverted. That's what we'll do in the next session.
Yes.
Right?
Wow. Very interesting, intriguing. You see how much you can learn, not just the physical aspect, but the whole mental, the way you think, and of course how you live. Yeah, we're going to learn much more about this. We only just begun to touch on the kidneys. Thank you very much, Dr. Myers. Part 2 to the kidneys. Make sure and stay tuned next week. I know you will. This was In Power Health. I'm Alex Ashley. Enjoy your week.